I just came from the purchase closing of this, our most recent rental purchase here in Michigan City, Indiana. And as you can see behind me, this is not the typical type of property that I buy. I'm typically buying really ugly properties that need to be fully rehabbed. But this one is turnkey. And turnkey means that you can rent it from day one. And you can see right here, I've got my Airbnb supplies here. I even purchased some of the furniture from the previous owner. And I'm gonna get this one on the market within a few days here on the Airbnb market as a short-term rental. And this one just made a lot of sense to me. Since I started in 2006, I think I've purchased 4 turnkey properties. So the last one I bought was in 2009, and since then, I've rehabbed about 150 properties. And so this is the first one in 11 years that I bought that was turnkey. So in this video, I'm gonna talk through some of the key considerations that you might wanna think through if you're trying to decide, should I buy turnkey properties or should I rehab properties? And why I think this one made sense after rehabbing 150 properties, why it finally made sense for me to buy a turnkey property. Hey, I'm Kirby Atwell, and this is Living Off Rentals, where we believe high quality rental properties are the best investment a person can make. So after being such a hardcore rehabber for so many years, why is it right now that I feel that this is the right property at the right time to purchase a turnkey property? So there's 3 main things that I think people should think through when they're trying to decide, should I buy a turnkey property that I can start renting day one, or should I buy a rehab? One that I can do the old BRRRR method on, the buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. The first of the 3 considerations is the financing climate right now. How cheap money is, how available it is, how competitive the terms are right now. So the typical property that I'm gonna purchase around this area, like this one, the same size, the same style, it's gonna be about $40,000, and it's gonna need a full rehab. So I'm gonna put another $40,000 to $50,000 into it, and it will appraise for about $120,000, $125,000. So I'll build in a bunch of equity into that property by purchasing the house that needs to be rehabbed. This particular property was listed for $105,000, and it caught my eye because the finishes were really nice. I could tell there was a lot of attention to detail. The finishes were better than what's common for this area. And so I came out day one. There was lots of showings day one. There was multiple offers. I put in a small escalation clause, and I ended up getting the property for just over $107,000. And it felt like a sin to me, somebody who's always looking for a great deal, to buy a property above asking price. But the appraisal came back at about $112,000. So there's a little bit of equity in there, but it's not the common amount of equity that I'm used to when I do a BRRRR type of property. The financing that I was able to get on this property is what made it so compelling to me. So typically I'll purchase a property with hard money or my own money, but you have to consider the cost of your money is the same as hard money, because if you didn't put it in your own property, you could lend it out to another rehabber at hard money rates. So either way, the money is costing you a high amount, which typically hard money rates are around 12% and a couple points. So, I'd buy a property for that cost of money, rehab it, and then I'll refinance it into a long-term loan. And I've been working with Finance of America, which is a commercial lender, and they offer 30-year commercial loans that don't require any income verification. They're not looking at your bank statements. You can buy it in your LLC. So it's very different than a typical 30-year residential loan. So you're gonna pay a little bit more in interest. I've been closing at 4.75%, but that's a really competitive interest rate for a commercial loan. So the lender agreed to finance 75% of the purchase price on this property at 4.75%. And so my total mortgage payment on this property is about $435 per month. And so on a property like this, on a short-term rental, in the winter time, I can make about $1,500 to $2,000 gross. And in the summertime, it's gonna be about $5,000 per month gross. Now, obviously I've got to pay cleaning fees and some utilities and other expenses out of that, but still the cash flow on something like that is just tremendous. And so it made a lot of sense to me to buy something turnkey with a small amount of equity in it that I can start renting on Airbnb right away. The second thing that I think is super important to consider and often overlooked is the cost of time. And a lot of times people will just calculate the cost of their financing when it comes to ownership of a property. You know, how much does it cost you to hold that property with the really expensive short-term financing? And that's one cost. But as you own that property, there's also other costs. There's the cost of utilities, there's the cost of taxes, there's the cost of insurance, you know, all these other costs that you're going to be paying while not getting any rental income while you're rehabbing that property. So in addition to hard costs of time, there's also soft costs of time. And this is something that nobody ever talks about. So how much bandwidth do you as a human being have to devote to each of your projects, each of your construction projects, each of your turnkey properties, each of your other responsibilities in your life, your family, or if you have a full-time job. So if you're somebody who has a high-paying full-time job over here, and you think you're gonna do a rehab and build in a bunch of equity, but the time and the energy that you're gonna devote to that rehab is gonna cost you money or cost you potentially your role over here that's making you a lot more money, then you need to consider that. In the same token, even if you're doing this full time, you need to consider how many rehabs can I actually do at one time. Because if you can buy a turnkey property that's gonna make you great money from day one, and it's gonna be relatively low energy, low time that you're gonna have to devote to that, and it's gonna free you up to do another rehab over here at the same time, then it might make sense to just mix in some of these turnkey properties. This was a big reason why I felt like this particular property made sense for me. You know, I'm still working a full-time job. I've got 2 small kids at home. We're rehabbing a farm that we're gonna eventually move into. I've got a couple other rehabs going on rental properties. So there's a lot on my plate. And so I felt like I could mix in this turnkey property at a relatively low lift and start generating some more income on a monthly basis right from day one. And finally, the last factor that I think is really important to consider, especially if you're new to real estate investing, is to recognize that construction projects are a pain in the ass. They never go according to plan. They never go according to budget. Contractors can be extremely difficult to work with. And so you have to consider that when you're taking on a BRRRR project, because again, on a spreadsheet, the numbers always make sense. The numbers are extremely compelling. But then once you get into that project, there's always going to be situations, there's going to be problems that pop up. It's going to take, again, your energy to solve these problems. And so you have to consider all the management of all the different moving pieces on that project, and you have to offset that with the equity that you're gonna make, and make sure that the project is worth it and that there's gonna be enough equity at the end, or why would you go through the pain of rehabbing a project to start with when you can just buy something turnkey like this? So I hope that helped clarify some of the considerations that you might want to take into account when you're trying to decide whether turnkey properties or rehabs are right for your next rental. And if you like this video, please smack that thumbs up and hit the subscribe button so that you can be notified when future videos come out. I release videos like this on a weekly basis on this channel. And also join the Living Off Rentals Facebook group. There's some incredible investors that hang out there. There's a lot of previous podcast guests. So if you listen to Living Off Rentals podcast, you can hear their take, their outlook on the rental market and what they're doing. And then you can interact with them right there in that group. So I hope to see you in the Facebook group, but if not, I'll see you in the next video.